I didn't really. I didn't even think of it as a career, like as an option, but that kind of came later. It was just kind of fell in my lap. I used art as a method to communicate as a small child. I had a speech impediment, and drawing was something I could do, and really rough drawings, but I could communicate that way. I had a tricky upbringing. My parents weren't very happy together. My mother was severely disabled before I was born, and I was an unhappy kid, and I started I went to a regular high school. After we moved back to Canada when I was 12, we lived in Africa for a few years, so when we moved back to Canada, I kind of settled here a bit, and I found the art department was like, it was like a haven for me. It was really safe. I had amazing art teachers, and I could communicate again. Like, it was just a communication tool. And even when I have some of those very early things, and I can see in that work that I was working things out that were happening in my life through drawing and painting. The ceramics came later, and then when I went, I transferred to Beale when I was in the end of grade 10, I believe, and that was just kind of really opened up for me there. There was lots of options, and I started to just understand the breadth of what could be done. I didn't understand that there was anyone else doing work about personal stories, because the paintings we'd had in our house, and I think the ones that I had seen in galleries to that point had been highly decorative or traditional figurative work. There wasn't much content, what I would call content to them. So that got me moving, thinking, and it just kind of opened up. I was a very, very, very introverted, shy teenager child. Yeah, there's a number of people. Those early art teachers were really influential. When I went to Beale, I had a teacher named Bevan Ling, who was a ceramic teacher. We're still very close friends. I often say I feel like he saved my life. Like, he was really important to me, and we have a very important relationship now. We don't see each other often, but we really connect. When I came back, I did a few stints at different art schools, and when I came back, I was lucky to rent a studio in a building where a lot of artists who I ended up being involved with later were living, and Jamili Hassan and Ron Benner were there, and they've both been really influential to me. Also, there's a collector, Phyllis Cohen, who's now passed away, but she got my work. Like, she got my work, and I wish I could have stopped her, because the way she she had insights into what I was doing that I didn't understand, and she just really had a clarity about it, and she understood it, and she supported my work. I'd say those are the main ones. A lot of local artists. Like, I was quite close with Greg Curnow. He saw what I was doing. He was interested in it. My husband and I were talking last night, anticipating this interview, and I said that Greg's work was about documenting his whole life, like his own experience, and he really let me in on that. And then I realized that's kind of what I've been doing. Like, I've been doing it in different ways. I've kind of veered from that, from the work I've done in the last few years with the big pieces, but I want to get back into that work. Probably my biggest challenge is self-identity, and I probably only the last maybe 2 years, maybe only 18 months, I've identified. When someone said, "Who are you?" whatever, I can now say I'm an artist. Even though a lot of other people saw that with me, I couldn't do it. I really had some issues with self-worth, self-value, and so that's been the biggest struggle. And when I'm doing that, it's hard to produce, or hard to put yourself out there, because I've been kind of like a mole. Like, I've been working, not much connected to the art world in the last 20 years. And when I had my children, lived in a neighborhood, I've lived in a neighborhood for 20 years. Only 2 years have my neighbors known that I've been going to a space like this to work all day. They saw me as a mother, a gardener, a wife, and what I did for my part-time job. So that's been the biggest challenge, is my own feelings of doubting myself with it. And because I didn't see other work like what I'm doing. I didn't see, like my work's rough and it's kind of gestural and scratchy, and that's not what I was seeing. And yet, whenever I kind of pulled it out, I got a very good response. I think it's a lot of things. Like a lot of artists, especially women artists, not artists but people. You know, I was very busy in those middle years of my life, taking care of my family, my children, and then after that taking care of older relatives as they were dying, and it really occupied a lot of my life. That's kind of opened up now. My kids have kind of, you know, they've flown off and the older people are gone, so I now have a lot more freedom. You know, I'm more comfortable financially, which opens things up too. And the main thing is I've had this opportunity in the last few years to do these major mosaics, which has been like just a remarkable experience. And I've just been able to kind of fly with it and make these things and have a huge group of volunteers to help me create a vision. Like I can make a design or an image and, you know, have 50 people help me implement it, and then, you know, the volunteers, the participants in some workshops we did, the impact on them is something that really made me see what I was doing, like see the power of what I was doing, and the potency of it. Like it was really making an impact on a lot of people. I really, like prior to about 3 years ago, I really struggled with meaning. I was considering just dropping the studio, getting rid of all my equipment. I just like it just wasn't there for me. I was making a lot of bad work, and then, you know, when I started to work on this big piece and working with all these different communities, it just, there was meaning to it. It was really impactful to a lot of people, and then completely transformative to me as an artist and as a person, like just as a human. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping to ride that wave for a while. Like I just feel like I found something I love to do. I'm good with making the contacts with the people, because the projects are such large scale. There's a big project management part to it, which I find satisfying. I'm a numbers person, mm-hmm. so I can do that. And then, you know, I always say that, you know, the mosaics are really beautiful, but the real beauty was in all the workshops and things before, and the people involved, and then the stories you get later. So it's a hard one. Like I think art is incredibly important, and it's important to the individual, to the community, and to the culture at large. I think its role has really changed and is changing, and people are taking it back. Like there was a period of time where it was for people that could afford paintings, or people that could afford to go to museums. It's getting out on the street again. Regular people are making art. It's less rarefied, and that's been a really, my work has fit right into that. It's talking about things that are happening right now. It's not always smooth and lovely to look at. It incites conversation. It makes people see what's happening. Like you know, we are living in really chaotic times right now. I feel they're chaotic times, and there's a real poignancy to that, but there's a real beauty to it too. And I think when people step back and we start to look at the actions of the individual in this time, it's just really potent. People respond to it, and I think when people can let down their veneer and look at it and maybe be comfortable with it beyond decoration. And working in ceramic, that's a fine line, because ceramic is often you know, a decorative medium, and I'm not doing that. Like, and I really never have. I've used the the clay for its fragility. Like I've used it to, like in my earlier work where there was images of the apparatus that I had in the home that I grew up in, or of my mother's broken body. It worked because it could break, but it also has, you know, that beautiful tactile feel. Like I'm totally in love with the medium. But I think art's incredibly important, and I think we need it more and more now. But it's getting out of galleries. Mm-hmm. It's getting onto the street. My work has evolved quite greatly, though I'm still on the same path, I'd say. My early ceramic work. Earliest work was doing bas-relief tile panels of wheelchairs and apparatus. So actually, maybe it hasn't evolved much, but no, it's evolved in how I use the material, and I use the material in a really simple way. Like I'm far from having the craft expertise of a fine potter, but I use it in a more guttural way. I've been finding methods of producing huge amounts of tiles with my images on them. I still like to show that a human has made it. It's very important. I respond to work that shows fingertips and, you know, marks of a human. I'm not interested in making something factory made, though I do have some images that I'm making that are laser cut, but they come from my own drawings. I feel like my work has traveled along the trajectory of my own experiences. Like 10 years ago, my brother took his own life, and I did a lot of work about that for a while. I've kind of indulged myself along the way in what's happening with me, and that makes it kind of precious in a way, and personal and secret, some of it, but when it's shown in a gallery setting, that gives it an interesting liveliness to it. It was a big change for me a few years ago when I was really struggling with meaning and whether I wanted to be an artist or not. When I joined the London Clay Arts Centre, I started working with studio potters, getting more kind of updated technical information, exposing myself to different ways of working with clay. I also exposed myself to the old craft versus art discussion, which never has a happy ending, and exposed myself to working with a bunch of people, which, you know, though there's difficulties with it, it has ultimately been an amazing experience, and one that I really gained so much from. So I guess that's the story. Just a few years with these big mosaics and seeing the impact on other people's involvement with it and how the work has affected them. We were able to let or invite over 600 volunteers to make tiles, and these came from all different community groups, and it was very impactful to people. One of the gateways that was just finished has pinched tiles made by a Yassiri Women and Children's group. It's from the Women of the World group of the Intercommunity Health Center, and these women left Syria, most of them without their spouses. The spouses didn't get out, so the women and children got out, and they're struggling with settlement. They're trying to get their kids integrated into living here. You know, I would imagine most of the business of living for them right now is totally function oriented and very difficult, and you know, just constant struggle. They had a lot of laughs amongst themselves, and it was probably really great, just their weekly congregation in this group. But you could tell in this group, it's the one that I think of the most. A lot of these women were women that made things. Like in Syria, they were makers. Like they might have been bakers or gardeners or seamstresses or whatever, and they they're not there yet here. Like, they don't have that option yet here. They're just trying to get, you know, a place to live, get their kids to school, learn some of the language, maybe get a bank account, do all these, like, you know, that stuff just takes so much time. So to be able to actually make something, and then the things that they make get glazed in really beautiful, joyful colors and installed on a permanent installation in their new city, and it makes them like they are valued, but it's like a monument to our, you know, the longer term residents of this community, valuing them here. That I feel very proud of that. I also feel proud at just sticking it out. Like that, you know, there were so many times along the way where it would have been easier to just, you know, get a career, like a paying career, a career with a paycheck. The financial struggles of being an artist really weighed on me, and I was fortunate to become a really good waiter, and I could make a good income from that. But it was very hard to balance doing that and working in the studio, raising my family, and you know, you just don't feel like you're doing anything properly. You're not giving 100% to anything because you're riding 3 bikes at once. And you know, I'm surprised now that I can look back and see that I did it, because I didn't know that I would always be able to do that. Ceramics is something, it was my very first class when I went to Beale, the very first class in September, and it was a room I loved going to. I could do it. I could, you know, I loved doing it. I always loved doing ceramics and drawing. Those were my 2 things, and I just saw them as 2 completely different ways to work, but later on in my work I started to, you know, lay them one on top of the other. I love the material. It's tricky, and it comes with a lot of apparatus, and the apparatus breaks down sometimes, but there's a lusciousness to it. I just love it. My earlier work, which definitely carries through now, and it's what I intend to start working on now that I'm kind of got a clean slate for work, is looking at myself, my own body image of my family, my children, and people that have passed away. And that comes as the child of a severely disabled mother. I identified myself as second generation disabled, and I just had a sense of being the other. So that has carried through. I'm also really interested in kind of overlaying flora and fauna and some of like the objects that are in our world. Like, I'm interested in this chaos that we're living in. Like, I'm interested in, you know, my recent work has bitcoins, images of bitcoins and Wi-Fi symbols. There's some syringes. I had some Beale students work, and one of them made a gun, but we couldn't, you know, I kind of had to draw the line there. That wasn't something that I felt was appropriate, but I think it's gone from the body, keeping the body as part of the subject matter, to how the body exists in the larger society, and how we are influenced by the change around us. That's what I'm interested in working at. So I've always worked with the body. I've been really interested in figurative work. I'm not trying to make a photographic image. I'm trying to make an image that's made with my marks, from memory often. And I've often worked from dreams, and dreams that, you know, I kind of extrapolate to be a bigger image. It wasn't something I'd really thought about. When I did join the Clay Arts Centre, they had applied for funding to build a big mosaic for the Canada 150, and they learned that I had done lots of tile work before and asked if I thought I could do that, and I just said, yep, I've got it. Like, I've got that, and then it just kind of took on a life of its own. I find that I love working large. Like, I love finding an image, building it, and I actually, like, I think I'm a laborer. Like, I like the labor part of it. These are really labor-intensive works. Like, we were on I had to get my working at heights training, and I've got a license to operate a skyjack. And we were on a skyjack for 9 weeks the first year, and I own my own scaffolding now. And I love that part of it. Like, I love the building part of it, and getting it up there, working it out. So I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I'm standing at the ground pointing. You know, I think when I'm doing that, I'm probably going to stop doing it. I like all the parts of the work. Working with the public was mostly really good. I would be lying if I said there wasn't difficulties working with some parts of the Clay Arts Centre. We just really had a different point of view, and I was muzzled a little bit with some of the ideas I had, and I've just even had to deal with something legally with them with one of the mosaics where they were trying to censor it. It's been a tricky relationship. Like I definitely have pulled out much more than the problems were. Like the positive was much bigger than the problems. The problems were pretty impactful though, and upsetting, and made working in that environment something that I probably won't do again. Like I'll probably make my work here now all the time, because I don't want to be censored. There's images of syringes. I've got laser cut images of syringes that are in some of the mosaics. And this year in the Oldies Village, where these mosaics are, is a particularly bad year for the people that are experiencing homelessness and addiction. And so those images of syringes have been really difficult for people, and it was never my intention to offend or stigmatize any area. I was trying to, like, I almost view the Oldies Village as my muse. Like I really love that area, and I think those syringes are important as a talking point for people going by, and most people aren't offended by them. I totally understand why people are. You know, I get it, and but you know, as a community, we've mostly looked away from the Oldies Village and not dealt with this, so maybe those images of syringes are a good thing for people to think, yeah, it's all really, you know, hip and cool and things are happening, but there's this problem. And I've talked to a lot of people about that, like, and how to go forward with it. The other part of working in the public sphere rather than in my private studio has been just unbelievably amazing. Like working with all these community groups, and the connections we've made, the stories, like that Canada 150 mosaic has so many stories with it, and I have a studio assistant, she and I are just starting to work on building a whole section to my website that's just telling those individual stories so they don't get lost. It was incredibly impactful to me. It really made me see what being an artist and what art is right now in a different way. I sometimes question if it is art or not. I don't know if it is, but whatever it is, I'm going to keep doing it. I like I just like the involvement of all these hands to make something, and that, you know, all these hands can make something that goes into a community, and then the community lives with that thing and they own it. And I think it does help all the people. And I've had lots of contact from the people working at the safe injection site, how those images of syringes and capsules on the mosaics, how their clients feel that they're being included. You know, that we're talking about them, and we are registering that, you know, what's happening to them is important. It's happening to all of us, and it could be, you know, any one of us having this. It could be my kids. It could be, you know, your mother, whatever. It could be anything. Like, and it's not. It doesn't discriminate. So, but I do look forward to. I'm pretty much done that work now, and I've just received some funding to work on things in the studio, and I'm really looking forward to that, like to just kind of overlaying what I've learned with doing this large scale work, with doing semi-large scale work, like on, you know, 4x8 sheets of plywood or something like this that could be hung in a gallery space, and that will be entirely my own work. Like I will make, you know, every part of it, and that will be nice to do and see where that takes me. It was a wild ride. Like it really was. It was so many people. The organizational element of that you know, I've got spreadsheets of organizing volunteers, of getting the materials in, of making sure, you know, who had press releases, all like that. That part of it was just mind-blowing, like how much work I spent doing the like probably 80% of the work was the organizational work and 20% was actually making the work, and then it segues to, at the end, the installation becomes 100% of the work. But no, it was fantastic working with all the people. There's some more images. I had an accident this year, and in the recovery period I had about 7 months to just sit around, and I thought about this a lot. And I've got a lot more images of my mother that I'm interested in using, and my mother was a really strong image in my earlier work. And I'd like to overlay that with some images of flora and fauna that interest me. So they might really look different than my other work has looked. And I'm looking to this period of time, I'm really putting no boundaries on myself, and I'm going to try all kinds of different things. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. A lot of women's work has been with craft materials and craft media, and I think there's some relevance with the strength of the material and the new stories artists are beginning to tell with that material and using it in different ways. And there's a bunch of people, women artists working in our country and in Europe and in the States that are pushing the material to different ways. Like they're acknowledging the value of all this women's work in the past and overlaying it with what's happening now. And I think there's a real sweet spot there where we're getting really visually interesting work that has a political story to tell, and I think women are getting more comfortable telling those political stories and listening to the voices of other women, and I think we're getting somewhere with that, and the younger women artists are, they're not even questioning it. They're not. They're pulling from anywhere they can to make this new work, and it's just really vibrant and exciting, and I think there's a lot of great stuff about to happen. There's a rigidity that happens in the craft world in producing things that removes some of the life from the object, and then there's a formality from the fine art world that dismisses, like it's like there's something happening there. And I think when people can just use the materials and make their own tools or whatever to make what they want without some kind of formalist idea of the outcome, like when when I think about it now, I have always made kind of rough, a bit awkward work, and I've shown it in lots of different gallery spaces. I think it's intriguing in that it is rougher and that it is, a bit wilder. It doesn't have the same, square edges to things. And I didn't really see, I think I was breaking through something doing that at the time, because I didn't worry about the edges. I didn't worry that, something might leak or something like that, like the vessel beside you might leak or something.